we are exactly 1 week away from the first Republican presidential debate in Milwaukee. President Biden was in the Badger State yesterday, marking 1 year since signing the Inflation Reduction Act into law, while touting the impact of Bidenomics. Watch.
Wages are growing faster than inflation. Folks, that's Bidenomics. It's about growing an economy by strengthening the middle class. And making things in America again. It's in stark contrast to the conservative Republican view, the so-called MAGA view, which is focused on corporate profits.
Since President Biden took office, overall consumer prices inflation is up nearly 16%. Core CPI inflation is up better than 14%. And food at home is up almost 20%. Joining me right now is Marc. He's a former special assistant to President Trump and the chief communications director for America First Policy Institute. Also with me is Brad Howard. He is the Vogel Group principal and former chief of staff to Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy. Great to see you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. Marc, first address what you just heard from President Biden. He says that the Republican view, the conservative view of the economy is all about profits. Well, I'm not sure what he means by that, but will you explain what the policies of the conservatives are?
Yeah, that's absolutely fake news. Look, you know, under President Trump, we were all about making things and putting America first, getting tough with China. We saw wages increase. We saw the lowest unemployment rate at the time for African Americans, for women. To go down the line, pre-pandemic, America was a lot better off than it is today. And where President Biden gets it wrong is people aren't worried right now about losing their jobs. They can't pay their bills. And that's where Bidenomics fails. People aren't worried about green energy. They're worried about having enough green to pay for energy, like gas and utilities. Yeah,
I mean, the policy of the climate change agenda is undermining any efforts in terms of growth. I don't see a growth plan. And we've got a new Rasmussen survey finds nearly half of voters think the economy is in poor condition. 38% of Democrats, too, believe voting President Biden out of office will be a good thing for their wallets. Brad, your response?
Well, look, when you look at all the economic indicators across the board, things are getting better in America, and that's due to President Biden's leadership and the historic Inflation Reduction Act. I was a chief of staff to a member of Congress who was a key negotiator for that historic piece of legislation. And when you talk about the climate change economy, the green economy, that's what the president's there touting to do. These are advanced manufacturing, high-wage union jobs producing solar panels and wind turbines. These wages are high. Wages are growing faster than inflation. Inflation is at a historic low right now. It's coming down. Bidenomics is working, and the American people are going to start to feel it. And then when you take into account all the things the Inflation Reduction Act does, which is cap insulin at $35, which is allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices, the amount of health care is coming down dramatically thanks to the Affordable Care Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, not to mention numerous other indicators that show a very strong, fundamentally strong economy.
Yeah, but what about all of the spending, Brad, that sent inflation to 40-year highs?
Well, you got to remember that a big part of that spending was to get us out of the pandemic, and that was necessary to keep people working, to ensure that people kept their health care so that when they got sick, they could get treatment and save lives. Saving lives was the #1 priority. Now that we are emerging out of the pandemic economy, things are starting to come back down. Things are starting to level out. And again, the core indicators of a strong economy are there and evident. Republicans keep wanting to change the goalposts here. I saw a senator earlier this morning say even if inflation got to 0, that they wouldn't be happy. So, I think Americans have to go out and do they feel confident in President Biden's leadership and in all the things he's delivered and then the things he's promising, and contrast that with the Republican obsession on wokeism and historical texts and all that kind of stuff. None of that really matters when you're trying to pay your bills.
Hold on. I don't know that wokeism is an obsession of the Republicans. I would say it's an obsession of the Democrats, actually. Wokeism, because the Republicans are always saying that the wokeism is too much, and they're trying to say that companies are too woke. But you're raising an important point about the solar industry. Isn't it true that many of those components are made in China?
Well, look, but those jobs are here in America, and that's what's tantamount.
No, the jobs would be in China if they're made in China.
Here in America.
If the batteries are made in China, the jobs are in China.
Look, we are taking these jobs from countries around the world. We are bringing them, onshoring them back to America with tax incentives and tax credits. We want these jobs. We want money in the pockets of hardworking Americans. The administration wants to raise
taxes. The administration wants to raise taxes. The president was very clear with Kevin McCarthy. He said he wants more revenue, and he needs the revenue. Hold on. he was very clear with Kevin McCarthy. He said he wants more revenue. He wants the revenue to come from higher taxes
on wealthy Americans who aren't paying their fair share. When an Amazon CEO
the last person I saw who didn't pay their fair share was Hunter Biden.
Well, that's a different story altogether.
No, it's not. It's actually paying your fair share. Marc Lauder, a new Morning Consult poll finds former President Trump is dominating the GOP field, up better than 40 points. But the poll has President Biden up 2 points on a Trump in a Trump hypothetical matchup, and 5 points up on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Emerson Polling has former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie passing Ron DeSantis for second place in New Hampshire as well. Marc, your thoughts on how the people see all of this?
Well, right now, these national polls a year and a half away from the general election are pretty meaningless. And national polls always skew toward Democrats because they have such a huge lead in places like the People's Republic of California and other liberal, failed states up in the Northeast. But when you look at the battleground states, the people understand that Joe Biden is the reason why they can't afford gas. Joe Biden is the reason why groceries cost so much. And Donald Trump is the one who wants to actually bring those prices down. And so when we get to this in those key battleground states, it's going to be absolutely fine. As opposed to Chris Christie, that makes sense in New Hampshire. He was the former governor of New Jersey. But Donald Trump is still up, almost 30 points in New Hampshire. He's up 40 points in the national averages. And really, the big thing right now is just how quickly Ron DeSantis' campaign is collapsing. The only person right now, other than Donald Trump, who's actually increasing is Vivek Ramaswamy, another businessman who wants to just come to Washington and get things done.
Brad, what do you make of the fact that most people see these indictments against President Trump as a two-tiered system of justice, and you've got Joe Biden trying to take out his #1 political opponent?
Well, let me first say that this isn't Joe Biden, and this isn't even the prosecutors. These are grand juries made up of average Americans who think there is enough evidence to bring forth criminal charges and allow a trial to take place in 4 different jurisdictions on multiple counts in multiple areas. So this is not some coordinated effort. This is grand juries that are presented with evidence are saying there's enough to move to trial, and so that's number one. Number two is the indictments are consolidating his base of support within the Republican Party nomination, but nationally, it's not helping him. And if anything, it's hurting him. Joe Biden's in a stronger position than ever for re-election. As long as Donald Trump is the nominee, Joe Biden has beat him once. He will beat him again. All
right. We will leave it there. Marc Lauder and Brad Howard, thanks very much. Tune in to Fox News for the first Republican debate next Wednesday, August 23rd, moderated by Martha McCallum and Bret Baier. Join us for the live debate next Wednesday. All of these issues will be on the table.